I'm going to be talking to you about this idea of cross-pollination. What does that mean? And how can that affect us professionally in our context? Now, of course, we've got people, I think, from pretty much all over the world here, different contexts, different roles, different setup, the way you work. And perhaps this will mean something different to each one of you. However, I think it can be applied to pretty much any role in higher education. So I'm a Principal Fellow of Advanced HE, if you're familiar with that system, and also National Teaching Fellow, and Associate Professor and PGCERT Course Leader at Ravensbourne University, London. So we're a small university in Greenwich, which is sort of the east side of London. And we have got, originally we were art and design, so we're very much based around, our type of learning and courses very much based around media and digital sort of and fashion and very much the creative side of things and projects. Everything is based around projects. However, we've grown exponentially now in the business and computing area. So we've changed a little bit, our identity has changed. And actually cross-pollination was one of the themes of this academic year for us, and has just ended or is ending this month. 23-24, we were talking quite a lot about how we can merge and help the different departments in our university work together. So I'm going to just briefly tell you what, that's it. Okay, what are the key ideas of this presentation? First of all, what is cross-pollination and why does it matter? Why should it matter to you? What are the links with inclusivity? That's the second point. And what would be some opportunities and challenges if you wanted to implement cross-pollination within your institution, let's say? So what is cross-pollination? I'm going to give you a basic, let's say, definition. Process of sharing knowledge, skills, and experiences across different departments, but also broader than that, industries or fields, to foster learning and innovation. Within an institution, often cross-pollination means interdisciplinarity. So my question for you is, would you mind using the chat? Have you got previous experience and any initial thoughts about cross-pollination? What comes to your mind? Or maybe if you haven't used that word before, but you've used interdisciplinarity, let's say. Any thoughts, experience, ideas around this that already you have maybe seen? So I'm going to try and look at the chat. Yeah. Okay. So I'll just give you a little bit of time, a few seconds. So I would like this to be quite interactive because it's easy to, otherwise just talk monologue is boring. So I'll be very happy if you want to share your thoughts in the chat. Okay, Jenny Blake, a lot of my roles, I'm saying Jenny Blake because there's another Jenny. A lot of my roles are about cross-pollination. That's right, most of the work is around communities of practice. Excellent, we'll talk about this in a minute. So, Wells, is it Wells? I'm not familiar with this term within this field exactly, but that's right, more like the bees. So, the idea, it's a very good point. The idea of using this term cross-pollination is because if you're familiar with what bees do, or others, even, it's not just bees, actually, for example, we were saying before, bats are very important pollinators in the whole world. So these are sort of birds or generally volatile. They bring pollen and nectar, etc., between different flowers and even other, not just flowers themselves. But it's very interesting that what they do is vital. If we didn't have these cross-pollinators, if there was no pollination, there would be no food crops actually in the world. Imagine. So maybe this is quite new to you. Right, let's see now what we can make of it. Oh, hold on, I'm still sharing, right? Because when you go to the, that's right. When you go to the thing, then you lose it. Let me just find it again, sorry. Yeah, okay. So I love the idea of cross-pollination, mostly focus on the output being interdisciplinarity, exactly. Okay, sorry, I couldn't see the end of that. So why does this matter? Okay, so first of all, if we think about the students, I don't know exactly how it works in your context, but usually this applies to most contexts. The students experience disconnected learning. There are many silos that are created through disciplines, and they form an echo chamber effect where both students and staff think alike, and they've got the same mindset, same types of knowledges, let's say, that they develop. And sometimes then the students are not actually aware of what's happening in the other. And most often they're not aware of what's happening in other disciplines or even other departments within their institution. So it becomes very much a one-way street. And they start and they finish, and they might become relatively expert in one field, but it's very much sort of segregated their knowledge. It doesn't have those, it doesn't branch out to other disciplines. However, the second set of bullet points there, we are in a super complex world, right? And actually it requires cross-pollination, professionally speaking. I think you can see now new jobs coming up on the market, and even your job. It's quite unusual now for a job to be totally self-contained. It will require branching out to other either departments or disciplines or roles within your institution. And for this reason, we are saying that cross-pollination actually, in terms of professionally speaking, could add to the students, could add value, impact, and reach to their learning. So we're going to talk about this in a minute. Yeah. However, there's one point which is very important. I'm going to say this a few times. Disciplinary knowledge is actually fundamental to interdisciplinarity. So we're not talking about the fact that if you start, if you build bridges with between disciplines, and if you work very much in an interdisciplinary way, it doesn't mean that your discipline or the ways of knowing and learning in your discipline don't matter or they are not valid. It doesn't mean that, quite the opposite. So we do need, because it's almost like a T-shaped model, right? So we need in-depth knowledge, and then we need that broadening. So sharing of mental models from across boundaries of expertise can create new or relevant modes of understanding the world. Now, this is very interesting because we said we are in a super complex world. There is a recognition that most big issues in the world, for example, if you do project-based learning or problem-based learning, and you're looking at issues and how to solve those, you very quickly realize this can't be tackled just from one perspective. It literally needs that multidisciplinary view of things. So when you put disciplines together, you create like this zone where they sort of touch. You create opportunities for innovation because they work in different ways. And then when they come together, it's like, oh, okay, this is an interesting combination. It's a bit like taking very unusual ingredients, putting them together and making a smoothie. And you wouldn't know what that taste is until you do that. Just to give you another example. Right, so academic, why is this interesting to us? Because the last line there says academics, practitioners are already actually knowledge integrators. And this is a very interesting expression and very interesting research by Bridgestock. So the idea is that we already help students build bridges in various different ways, but sometimes those bridges stay within our discipline or field. How about building bridges with these other discipline or fields? So becoming knowledge integrators in a broader sense. So I'm going to now come to, just to highlight that point of the role of disciplinary thought in interdisciplinarity. By situating itself as a means of synthesizing insights from diverse perspectives into a holistic understanding of complex phenomena, interdisciplinarity engages disciplinary thought at the core of its most basic assumptions. So actually it challenges you to truly understand maybe your discipline so that you can contribute to this situation or learning experience in a way that perhaps others can't, because you're coming from this particular perspective. Hope that makes sense, yeah? So obviously, I think you'll get the slides, and some of these things might need a little bit more thinking. Now, I want to give you some examples. Have you heard of biomimicry? I don't know whether you've heard of this. So biomimicry is actually a science, and it is because mimicry, to mimic or to copy, and bio is nature. So this is actually the science of imitating clever solutions that are found in nature for different uses, for human sort of purposes. So for the humans, for people to have an advantage. For example, there's a whole series that I was watching about this. There's videos and commentary. For example, the shark skin. It's so clever how the shark skin stays clean. Now, scientists are studying the shark skin to make some innovative materials for clothing. The hummingbird capacity to fly upside down. Now, scientists and engineers are looking at that and thinking, okay, well, how can we make better airplanes or helicopters that can do that? Because usually that's doesn't quite work upside down. So biomimicry is an example of cross-pollination, where you take something from nature, and for example, the bullet train, Japan's bullet train. Do you know that that is a direct imitation of the, oh dear, what's that bird? I forgot now. I've got to think about it. So which plunges in the water to catch a fish, and the way the beak is shaped, it's just amazing. So even they've recognized the bullet train is an direct imitation of this particular bird. So this is a field, the whole field. But then if you want to look at it a little bit more close up, let's say, I don't know whether you know who Gareth Southgate is. He's the football coach for the England team. Well, until very recently. I think he's just resigned recently. Anyway, so he's had a different approach to coaching. What he's done is he's like, okay, well, I'm a coach, but I would like advisors. Now, who do you think should be advisors of a football coach? Now, you may think, well, the best people are the really good football coaches. Actually, he said, no, I don't want other coaches. I might have one or something, but no, what I really want is other people with different perspectives, but that they've got something to say that I can learn and use for football coaching. And for example, now I didn't, I had the list, sorry, now I can't remember, but I remember that the list of people advising him was a cycling instructor. So cycling is a different sport, right? Then he had a military person, a general. He had somebody who built a sports center. And then somebody else, I think, was to do with the coaching as well, but it was again another sport. I don't know if it was tennis. So he created a group of people as his close advisors to coach the England football team, who had other perspectives than football. Because he said, the other coaches, I already know pretty much what they think, what they know, how they act, their mindset, because I'm one. But it's these other perspectives that I want. So that's a perfect example of cross-pollination. And there was a fascinating article that came out to say that actually we could learn, all of us, in different professions, from Gareth Southgate, in terms of understanding the value of learning from other sort of related fields to what we are trying to do. And so that's an example of cross-pollination. Now, in higher education, there are some interesting examples. There are, of course, I'm sure that you have probably maybe come across some interdisciplinary or cross-disciplinary initiatives or modules or projects. Now that one, Doctors Can Dance, I'm going to have, you can check the reference when you get the slides. It's an absolutely fascinating project that was done in a UK university where it was about, I'm sorry, I hope nobody gets sort of shocked here, but it was about the potential use of your body once you're dead. In other words, once you're dead and you become a corpse, would you like or would you allow science or doctors to use your body to study the body, for medical sort of reasons, let's say. So this is a very delicate thing because there are cultural sort of issues that come into place, religious as well. it's very sensitive, actually, and sometimes can be very difficult to talk about it because there could be trauma as well. So the idea was, how do you help potential doctors to explore and talk about such a delicate issue? And so they had this project where they combined a cohort of medical students with a cohort of dance students. They were both of them studying towards a degree, one in medicine, one in dance. And they put them together with the challenge of creating a representation and some sort of performance to explore, to give food for thought to everybody, the audience and themselves, about this particular issue. And so the project was called Doctors Can Dance. And I'll tell you later the impact and how deep and how deeply valued this experience was by the students. So medical students basically learning through dance about something quite delicate. So that's an idea of what this cross-pollination can do and can be about. But there is also, now because of time, I'm not going to click the link and show you, but there is also a whole university in London, which is called London Interdisciplinary School, which I think is a slightly wrong sort of, I think, name they chose because the name school, I think a lot of people think it's either secondary or even primary school, but in fact it's a university. So I'm just saying, I think it could be easily missed or overlooked as a higher education provider. But in fact, the entire university is based on cross-pollination. And so what they do is they don't have a major in XYZ, whatever the like discipline could be, a major in languages or in engineering, or they have a degree where within the first year, where students learn research methods and many different things that they learn, but they are actually more than anything deciding what their focus is for their degree, what is the, inverted commas, issue, what's the question they want to investigate. So it's problem-based stroke project-based learning, where they will investigate an issue, which could be climate change, it could be anything, it could be earthquake, it could be cancer, whatever they're interested in. And then that particular issue is studied through the rest of the degree from all different perspectives and culminates in a final sort of project output, which is totally interdisciplinary. So they don't just study one, they don't become one particular thing, they become versatile. So this is absolutely fascinating. So there is a whole university that exists that actually operates on a cross-disciplinary basis. Maybe you had never heard of that before. So these examples show you that cross-pollination can apply from very large scale, such as biomimicry, to different fields such as sports with Gareth Southgate, to smaller projects within an institution, such as Doctors Can Dance, or a whole institutional approach. So it's quite interesting. There is a whole movement around cross-pollination. And actually, there are so many projects that I found, but I just had to keep it a bit short here. So what's the key point? The key point is about bringing people together whose perspectives are relevant to the situation, whatever the learning is at hand, but also different enough from each other to maximize both the depth and the range of ideas, leading to collective intelligence. So the idea is to really create a new situation for this learning, much more holistic, where you literally use all of these different perspectives and intelligences collectively, and hopefully you get to better results. So I've finished with the first point now. What is cross-pollination and why it matters? I hope that's clarified it for you. Of course, I mean, I could be here a long time talking about this, but I would like to just now talk about links with inclusivity. There is an activity also coming up where I'll ask you to participate. So links with inclusivity, what's the overlap? Well, you remember I just mentioned now the London Interdisciplinary School. Well, they have written, I don't know, some of you may know, I published a book last year about inclusive learning design. There's the reference there, a practical guide to creating equitable learning experiences. And one of the sort of provocations I have is about from the LIS school, from the London Interdisciplinary School, I asked the colleagues there, can they come up with a narrative where they show what are the links, what's the overlap between interdisciplinarity and inclusivity. And so they wrote this narrative, and it's summed up in this visual aid. So you've got interdisciplinarity and inclusivity in the middle, and then I'm just going to read clockwise and add just a little bit of commentary. Just because of time, let me check. I don't think I can spend, let me just check out, oh yeah, how long I can spend. It's just about a few minutes, right? So they are quite similar, really, these two. Not so much in, let's say, operationally, but in what they are trying to achieve. So they are actually trying to do very similar things. Starting from the red there, if you see, multiple perspectives. So both of them are trying to say, let's not look at this one way, let's have a much broader, holistic way. And then that goes hand in hand with challenging assumptions and biases, because there are usually assumptions made regarding a certain issue. Let's say, for example, if your problem you were dealing with or you wanted to deal with was, as I said before, was, I don't know, like when we say cancer, there might be a number of assumptions about why cancer happens. And if you're a medical student, let's say, but when you start something multidisciplinary, cross-disciplinary, and you start doing this cross-pollination, you might get very different perspectives that you literally hadn't even occurred to you. So it will challenge your assumptions about a particular thing. Then interweaving diverse knowledges, similar to this. You're trying to bring together different ways of knowing, not just one way. So the silos, breaking the silos. And this is actually a form of decolonization. So that goes into the bottom right corner now, decolonizing minds and systems. Because really, this disciplinary, sort of rigid disciplinary division is quite typical of the global north. And usually in like First Nations, etc., there's always a much more holistic way of looking at things. So this is a very interesting crossover that there is with this. And then actually, it goes hand in hand with that also, navigating power differentials. For example, if, let's say, you put at a table to discuss and to cross-pollinate ideas, you put engineers and doctors, and then you put graphic designers. I don't know, I'm just saying like that, and I don't know, a languages person. Just have a guess who at that table might think that their opinion matters more. Well, of course, depends on the problem we're tackling, but there is a certain hierarchy of importance of discipline that we know. Certain disciplines have got more prestige. They seem to have more weight, no matter what situation. But in fact, interdisciplinarity and inclusivity, it actually helps navigate those power differentials, because normally when you put people together, it's really to give everybody an equal chance to contribute to that situation. So no one opinion will be better or more important than the other. And the last point there on the left, promoting reflexivity, openness, and respect. Because sometimes this could be one of the first times that somebody is invited to think differently or take into account quite seriously somebody else's viewpoint on a problem or a situation. So as you can see from these points, this is literally just touching the tip, but the idea is that interdisciplinarity and inclusivity, not so much from an operational viewpoint, let's say, but from the perspective of what they're trying to achieve, the philosophy behind the two approaches, actually, they are quite similar. They are trying to achieve very similar things. And I would like you to invite, if you get hold of my book, to read this narrative. It's only a couple of pages, but it's actually really fascinating. And there's quite a lot of research around this that has already happened. So now you've, I think, got a taste of that. What are the links with inclusivity? So we talked about what is cross-pollination and why it matters. We talked about the links with inclusivity. Now, if you were to implement some cross-pollination initiative, what would be the opportunities you have and what would be the challenges? Well, I'm going to give you some ideas. What could be some opportunities for students? Right, first of all, in terms of learning, you can maybe think about micro, meso, or macro levels initiatives. What I mean is they could be initiatives at lesson level, where you literally put students together for one lesson from two different maybe departments or parallel courses, let's say. It could be meso, where you have a module that is shared, or a particular project that is shared among different disciplines in an institution. Or it could be macro, like in the case of the London Interdisciplinary School, where the whole school embraces interdisciplinarity and cross-pollination. And then it can be like embedded, infused in everything students do. And you could have cross-disciplinary lessons where you go and teach another cohort from another discipline, or somebody else comes to you. Of course, you could have interdisciplinary projects, modules, different sizes, different types. Perhaps you've seen those. But there are also opportunities in terms of research and scholarship. Maybe you hadn't thought about that. I don't know. How about creating interdisciplinary research groups that include students, or maybe even just our students? And aiming for collaborative interdisciplinary scholarly outputs, which of course would include students. In other words, if there is a research project, instead of taking 2 or 3 students just from the same discipline, because it seems obvious, well, why not take students from different disciplines? You might be amazed what comes out of that. And students can be so creative and can find connections and build those bridges and cross-pollinate maybe more easily than we think. But also there are opportunities for staff. And some examples, these are really just some examples. What about if you got a mentor from another field, or you mentored somebody who is in another field? And that might include the second point, to shadow colleagues in different roles or departments. You literally follow them around, you are with them for half a day or even a day, and you see how they operate, how it works within that discipline. What do they do? There might be some amazing tips or approaches that you pick up that you can then use in your own discipline or department. And also, I mean, you're obviously at an event right now. What about attending industry or other events, conferences, webinars, workshops that are outside your immediate field? So of course, time permitting, because we're all very busy. But if there was something that is not exactly what you do, but it's sort of similar, that could be very interesting. Once I went to a conference, which was about, it was nothing to do, so I teach teachers, so it was nothing to do with education developments, but it was about philosophy, the basic questions of philosophy asked within teaching and learning. And, you know, that was literally 10 years ago. And I remember that event so well, because for me, that was literally cross-pollination. I had never thought about what I do from that perspective. It was absolutely fascinating. So it can help you. Also, you could create multidisciplinary communities of learning, communities of practice towards a shared goal or output as staff. That could be students, it could be staff, could of course be also mixed as well. So I'm going to ask you now to go onto this Padlet. I'm just looking at the time. Yeah, so we have got about 10 minutes, but perhaps not exactly 10 minutes. I'm going to ask you to please go there to do 3 things. Think about interdisciplinarity or cross-pollination in your context. Generate ideas for a potential cross-pollination initiative of an appropriate scale. I mean, of course, if you want to talk about creating a whole new institution, it's great, but perhaps that won't be so likely for you to happen, you know, right now. But there are some questions here. What's its measurable added value? Okay. How would it enhance inclusivity? What challenges do you anticipate? Any solutions? And then I'm going to ask you to post them on that pattern. So you've got the QR code there, but I would like to stop sharing a moment so I can put that link in the chat. Let me just find it. Yeah. And the actual, yes, the actual, dear, where is the chat? Yeah, sure. That's it. The actual Padlet has got that QR code as well. So I'm going to now share that so that you can see it. So let me just try. Sorry, because I'm more used to Teams, so sometimes I just can't find where things are. Okay, I'm just trying to find my Zoom. Where's Zoom? Oh, here's Zoom. I can't find it. Okay, so that's it, cross-pollination share. I hope you can see that. Right, so that, oh, all right. I had added the, all right. I had added the QR code here, but no, I can see it's not here. No one. So yeah, so as you can see, it says add ideas for potential cross-pollination initiatives for your students and or for your role, for yourself. What would be the added value of these initiatives? How would they enhance inclusive practices? And what challenges do you anticipate any solution? So if you're not too familiar with Padlet, in the bottom right corner, there is a plus. If you click that, it creates a post, and then you can post it. Is everybody okay accessing the Padlet? Yeah, okay, good, thank you. All right then, so I'll wait, I'll give you, a few minutes, and then we can just talk about it. So I'll go quiet, you'll be pleased to know. And communicate. Oh, sorry. All right, you're recording again. So coming now to the Padlet ideas that have been shared. So academic accommodations, such a big issue that is often an ongoing conversation. What should we do? How should we do it? So this is very interesting. You're saying that you're bringing together campus mental health partners, disability studies faculty, Center for Teaching and Learning. I don't know what that is, title or for director, and student perspectives could be helpful. So if you bring together all these different stakeholders, what would happen then? Yes, and perhaps that would also help reframe accommodations as things that could be built into assessment teaching instead of bolted on. Exactly. I think you could have even instructional designers if you have them, and anybody from teaching and learning, like that type of thing. But that would be very, very interesting. It could be a cross-disciplinary, cross-institutional initiative. And then you can decide the output. So you got to think, what could be the obstacles there? So what challenges do you anticipate? I don't know who wrote that about. Yeah. So then there is a challenge with Composition 101 classes. All first-year students must take our version of a Composition 101 course, and these are taught by all faculty and staff at some point in their career. So they are housed in or taught within all disciplines. Okay. But when students take the one with a math faculty per se, they learn to write through a math lens. But when they go to take the course into a different field, they struggle to write well in the new course. Exactly. So how can they help it? Right, so exactly, who could it be? So I think this would impact how we teach writing more generally, as students often struggle with differences in convention because their experiences can be so siloed. So I think perhaps it needs to be something that is supported across a university and have the composition classes be the anchors or start for it. Exactly. There are some models. There are some very interesting models, actually. Now you're saying that if you want to redesign it, let's say, and better embed this, throughout the institution, a bit like the first one, you could put together a working group. You could just send a call out and have students, recent alumni, those who've recently done it, prospective students, and then a variety of staff, study skills, librarians, as well as different faculty, and maybe learning design instructors or somebody from teaching and learning. And then had that conversation, because obviously there's a context, there's your institution is the context. How has it been done so far? What are the gaps? And what would be this new model, and how will you evaluate its impact? And how can it be embedded maybe across the board? I'd like to tell you that regarding something like this, a first year core and across the board writing sort of module. In my book, there is a fascinating case study from, I think it's from the States, and how they redesigned it, precisely creating an interdisciplinary group. And how they did that process is explained. I can tell you more a bit later, but that would be very interesting for you to have a read. Optionality in assessment. Let's look at this one. If we lift the assessment out of modules and into program level, there could be options for students to explore big questions in interdisciplinary team across subjects. Exactly. So they will need to be carefully built. Yes. And it would be tricky to do in a big way. Well, that's very interesting. So programmatic assessment, sometimes it's to do with how you design assessment across modules, so that the pinch points and there's no duplication of outcomes. But this is even more interesting, because you would bring it like to the next level where there is an assessment which is across the board. Obviously, I can tell you from now that the disciplines will want their own assessment, absolutely. But it could be that they have their own assessment reduced or a bit lighter, and then a second sort of stage assessment that would be across the board. So perhaps a two-stage approach might be better here, but it would be fascinating if you were able to put together a group to work on that. I'd love to know what happens there. Trying to let students involved in the community with their knowledge in a certain subject, but it is not easy to let students be exposed to in the street. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, that's true, actually. Exactly. You see ethical considerations, how much you can, go into and send students even in the public. So thank you so much for sharing these ideas. I think they are fascinating, and I can just see 3 wonderful cross-pollination projects being born here. And if you're able to pursue it, why not? Now, normally in other events where there were more people and I did it even on site, I actually created those groups, and those groups are still going. It's amazing. And they are now planning their outputs. But just here, I think it's just to give you a little taste, just for you to think about what could be possible, what is feasible within your sphere of influence and within your institution. So now I'm just going to quickly go back to the slides to conclude, because I can see the time is running out so quickly. Except I already know what's going to happen. I think when I share, it's going to take me back to the first slide. Let me guess. Is that what's going to happen? Let's see if I share from the start. No. No. Okay, good. Except I'm going to stop. Hide presenter view. There you go. Right. So just one thing I want to say about the impact. There are so many different, again, aspects you can look at this, but definitely students benefit enormously. Staff and institutions benefit in small and big ways, but also wider society benefits, because you get graduates with competencies that normally they just would not be able to develop within their own discipline only. And there are some unexpected consequences or impacts that might be beyond literally what you can plan for, in a positive way, of course. Now, I'm just going to give you some testimonials. What do students say? I think this quote sums it up beautifully. Dead Man Talking was the Doctors That Can Dance project. So this is a student, medical student, right? So it says, for me, was a deeply personal experience that has taught me life, personal and professional skills that I know will stay with me for many years to come. Now, honestly, if that doesn't sum up, that's exactly what we want students to get out of their studies. They invest so much time and money and effort, of course, in their studies. That's what we want. We want them to grow, as I say, in life, personal and professional skills. And this is literally, that's what happened in this case. And just by the way, there are some very interesting links then talking about this life and personal development within the development goals. If you're not familiar with those, again, there are references at the end, but they are rooted in interdisciplinary research. The Inner Development Goals, IDG framework, consists of 5 dimensions with 23 years of human inner growth and development. So there are the sustainability ones, the 17, but these ones are the inner development goals. So with the cross-pollination, we can support students develop their inner development goals. So it's very interesting. There are many challenges. It's not going to be easy to do. First of all, there is resistance to change. The second thing is, you see, you talked about putting together those groups. Well, guess what? When those groups come together, you've got to do some groundwork to help people develop shared values, a shared culture, a shared language. And that's actually a threshold concept. It can be very tricky to get people to work together meaningfully and truly respect each other. So perhaps you need to do a bit like at the beginning of this event, an introduction where you explain the benefit of working together, the respect, ground rules, and how you're working towards creating this new language, etc. There is also from a practical viewpoint, workloads can be an issue and not enough wider institutional support in some areas. You might find that it's difficult because the institution is not so keen. It may have to be in your own time. Sometimes it's hard to get data to gauge starting points. So you may have a feeling, this module is not working very well. Okay, what's the data? How many students actually take it? How many students pass it in the first attempt? How many retakes, etc. Sometimes it's hard to get that data. Also, sometimes it's hard to gauge what's the outcome you're aiming for from the outset. Sometimes you just don't know. You're exploring an area. And so sometimes that makes it difficult to get buy-in because people want to know, okay, what am I going to get out of it? What is it that we're doing? But sometimes you're going to decide it together. And also sometimes assessment or quality regulations could be an obstacle because there's only so much flexibility that systems have before you have to do a whole redesign, revalidation, big process. So you've got to check what is feasible before you launch into a project which might be stopped because of the regulations. However, one of the most important things I like to say is if you do start any initiative that is of this nature, it's so important that you evaluate its impact to provide this evidence. And so from the outset, make sure you have a plan about how to gather that evidence, the evaluation, qualitative, quantitative data, whatever it is that you're going to be able to gather, so that you can make your case as to why this initiative added value and was impactful. So what's the conclusion? The conclusion is I think cross-pollination is really worth it because if you want to walk fast, walk alone. But if you want to walk far, walk together. And cross-pollination is about walking together with people that we normally don't particularly walk with, professionally speaking. So thank you so much. As I said, there are all the references, including to all the things I mentioned, including to the London Interdisciplinary School, to the Doctors That Can Dance, my book, etc., etc. So I'm going to stop sharing, otherwise I can't see anyone, and I think we have very few minutes only. Is there anything that is in the chat? Maybe before, let me see if I can see the chat actually, first of all. Oh yeah, that's a good question about liberal. Right. So who got liberal?
So Yasser and I were having a chat about liberal arts versus interdisciplinarity, and we came to no conclusion at all. Except perhaps that as someone who's experienced liberal arts education, it's less about interdisciplinarity, coming from a position of contrasting expertise, and more about that breadth that you were talking about early on. So it might be helpful to have had a liberal arts education. I think it probably exposes you to ways of thinking that make interdisciplinarity a bit easier. But yeah, we were just sort of contrasting the two.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not an expert on the US the way it works, but I know that my understanding is that it does provide, it's supposed to be, that's the whole assumption of it, the philosophy is to provide a broad education. That's why you don't specialize straight away. You basically almost taste a bit of everything before you specialize, which is a great idea. But as you said, yeah, maybe it's not so much about this integration, which is I would say the key piece of interdisciplinarity and cross-pollination is the fact that it's not just that these things are there to give you idea, but it's because you're integrating those different knowledges. And I think somebody said about how in-depth, that's right. So it depends that's interesting. Going back to Gareth Southgate, I know maybe that example now is like, oh dear, because it didn't go so well, but it he nearly got there. But what he said is that he wanted experts in other fields because he considered himself an expert. So he said, okay, I've got expertise in this field. I want those who've got expertise in other fields, and then we come together. So that's a good point, yes. So it's a bit like, I think you need a bit of a mix, but you do need people who know enough. For example, you see those projects, I'm talking to everybody here, those projects that you suggested in that Padlet, I mean, they are great. But if you are quite experienced in your field and you've already done things a certain amount of years, you would very much benefit from talking to somebody with that level of expertise in another field, as well as somebody who may not, because, say students, got to be realistic. If they are year one students, there's only so much they've already understood or not, but it can be beneficial. But yes, definitely having that mixture of expertise levels, that would be very good, actually. Yeah. I don't know if there's anything else in the chat that I haven't seen it. Oh yeah, so title for that, those on campus charged with keeping the university in accordance with the national laws regarding equal opportunity. Oh, I see. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, because I hadn't seen. Okay, yeah. So I think it's 4 o'clock. I think we have to stop. Sorry. I don't know if there's anything else. Perhaps I'm very happy if you want to reach out and we can have a chat. I'm always interested in collaboration. I'm writing a book about the PG cert, this offer of the staff development, and it's very much cross-pollination. So I'm very interested if there's anybody who's interested in connecting. But I'm going to pass back. Thank you so much for your time. I'm going to pass back to either Irene or Yasef or to close. Thank you.
Thank you, Virna, so much for your session. And I'm going to reach out because I want to have a discussion about the idea of the nuance that is introduced between cross-pollination and liberal arts. But yeah, I'm going to reach out to you very soon. Thank you so much. And I'm going to